want to say hi to Angela and then say bye. Good morning, everybody. Glad to see you guys here this morning and excited to kick off our school year. We are excited about this morning. It's in a little different environment than we expected and we planned. This has been in the works since probably last fall, but I think we still are excited to hear the message, and I think what we're going to hear today is going to be very inspirational and very appropriate for the kickoff of our 2020-2021 school year. Before we get started, let's all just take a moment to think about the high school as they are about to start graduation here in just a little bit, and thankful for beautiful East Tennessee weather that's we're going to get to enjoy this morning. And Dr. Barker is working with the high school this morning, so she's not going to be able to be here in person, but she has a message to share with everybody. So if we'll just take a second and watch the video, Dr. Barker is going to share her opening message.
Welcome back, everyone. So here we are. Firsthand, we're seeing that we're having to be flexible and use our technology tools to keep doing what we need to do in this unprecedented time. I'm at graduation 2020 today while you are watching this. And let me just say, I am so proud of our students and our teachers and administrators for making this day happen for our seniors. Again, I want to welcome everyone, and I want to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt appreciation for you as being a part of our Lenoir City family. So each one of you in your schools should be able to get a gift that we have. These LC card coasters are yours as an appreciation gift for being a part of our family. So please see your principals to get these. I understand that as we return, there are many emotions flooding each one of you. These emotions run from excitement to anxiety, from our teachers who are so excited about walking into their own classroom for the first year, to those of us that have been around a long time teaching, and we've never seen a time like this, and we feel a little bit of anxiety. No matter where you are on the emotional or the experience spectrum, we are all experiencing a new set of circumstances that are ever-changing and absolutely historic in public education. Over the past 4 years, our district has been developing an online learning process, and we've had a small group of students that have been through the iLearn Institute. To date, we have approximately 300 this year who are enrolled for the first semester in this online opportunity. We're in a new world where we all need to learn to teach in two modes, both at home and instruction in the classroom. Thankfully, we have a learning management system and we have a continuous learning plan that will allow teachers to provide that instruction to students, whether the students are sitting in your classroom or whether those students are sitting at home. The district has invested in technology tools to give you the highest quality that we could find. Now you must learn to use the technology to make your teaching magic happen. And we truly believe we are in the next generation of schools. Make sure you're ready to go online with your instruction beginning day one, because you most likely will have students who will be out of the classroom for short periods of time due to exposure or waiting to be cleared to return to school. We are responsible for providing the seamless opportunity to all these students. To keep our faculty and staff and students protected, everyone must wear a face covering when you are within 6 feet of another person. Now we know how difficult that is, So basically that means we're all going to be wearing face coverings, and so will our students. That face covering can be a mask or a shield. Thankfully, our community has been in the low spread category, but as more movement has taken place over the past weeks, we're beginning to see some increases in Loudoun County. So as we take this journey together, we must take care of each other and take every precaution against the spread of the virus. Our supplies of masks, shields, and cleaning supplies and hand sanitizer has been stockpiled. We just learned that the State Department of Education is going to provide additional supplies to teachers for your classrooms. And they are also going to provide enhanced protective equipment for our nursing and clinic staff. I'm so excited about that. Again, we're in this together. So remember, stay at home if you're sick, and immediately let your principal know if you have had contact with someone who's tested positive. Make sure everyone is wearing a face covering. This is the #1 way to keep the spread minimized. Wash your hands frequently and hand sanitize often. Wipe down your work areas. Social distance as much as possible during the day. As we work together this year, more than ever, we're going to ask you to take responsibility for your classroom and for the school for the benefit of everyone who works and learns in the school. Your principals have safety and health plans for each of your schools. Join them as these plans are implemented. Make suggestions for improvement as we start school. Also be aware that we are constantly monitoring our schools and plans, and we are in constant contact with health professionals. We will be flexible enough to make changes to our plans as the situation changes. We're working to partner actively with colleges and universities to creatively think about ways to staff for substitutes. I know many of you are concerned about that. We will not be pulling teachers for professional development during class periods to minimize the use of substitutes. In addition, we are currently looking for anyone who would be interested in receiving a stipend for riding along with our bus drivers in the mornings to help check temperatures of students. If you're interested in doing that, there will be a stipend, so you need to let Mike Sims know. Again, I cannot say thank you enough to our custodians, our maintenance staff, our business professionals, principals, and supervisors for all the work they have done throughout the spring and summer to get us to this day. We're beginning a new school year, 2020-2021. It will be one for the history books. In closing, let me just share a quote from Corrie ten Boom that means a lot to me right now. Worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength. We're going to take care of each other this year. Blessings to each of you.
Okay, at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker this morning. It's Miss Valley Collins, and I hope some of you remember the, I don't know if it's tragic, you can talk about that, but it was a very unexpected event that Miss Collins has had to, she lived through, and is kind of an inspiration in terms of a story of survival and making it through the Miracle on the Hudson, if you recall that plane crash not so many years ago. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Ms. Collins. She has quite a little connection to Lenoir City Schools too. So she's glad to be here this morning, and we're excited to have her. So thank you, Ms. Collins.
Texas 1549, 700, climbing 5,000.
Contact on maintain 15000.
Maintain 15000, Cactus 1549.
Cactus 15.9, turn left lane 270.
This is Cactus 1539, in birds to follow through us, returning back towards LaGuardia.
Okay, you need to return on LaGuardia. Turn left heading up 220.
220.
Stop your departure, it's got emergency returning. What is it, 1529, he, bird strike, he lost all engine, he lost the thrust in the engine, he's returning immediately. Cactus 1529, which engines? He lost thrust in both engines, he said. Got it. Cactus 1529, we can get it to you if you want to try to land 1913.
We may have been deposited.
Cactus 15.9, could be less traffic to runway 31.
Unable.
Okay, what do you need to land? Do you want to try to go to Teterboro?
Yes.
Teterboro, Empire, actually, LaGuardia Departure guy, emergency inbound. Hey, good. Cactus 15.9 over the George Washington Bridge, wants to go to the airport right now.
What's going on, airport check? Does he need assistance?
Yes, it was a bird strike. Can I get him in for runway 1?
Runway 1, that's good.
Cactus 15.9, turn right 280, you land runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be done.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus? Cactus 15.9, radar contact is lost. You also got Newark Airport up at 2 o'clock in about 7 miles. Eagle 54718, turn left lane 210.
210, 2718. I think he said he was going to the Hudson.
Cactus 15.9, you saw him?
It's early afternoon of January 15th, 2009, and I've just stepped aboard U.S. Airways Flight 1549 that's scheduled to fly from New York's LaGuardia Airport to Charlotte, North Carolina. Once in Charlotte, my plan was to board another airplane that would bring me safely home to Knoxville. I stepped on board the aircraft, which was an Airbus A320. And the way an A320 is laid out is you've got a center aisle down the middle and you've got 3 seats on each side of that aisle, so a total of 6 passengers per row. I take a look at my boarding pass and I quickly figure out that I've got an aisle seat, which makes me pretty happy because I like aisle seats. Then I became a little disappointed when I realized that my aisle seat was on the very last row of the plane. And I can't tell you why, but I typically like to sit closer to the front of the plane. But I'm making my way through the people, and over the PA system, they're telling us it's a completely full flight, find our seats, stow our belongings, we're already behind schedule. So I get to my seat and I put my briefcase up in the overhead. I'm just about ready to sit down when I noticed something a little odd, because draped across the back of my seat was a baby blue baby blanket. So I grabbed the blanket, I see the flight attendant in the galley, and I said, "Ma'am, this isn't my blanket." She said, "Oh, I'll take it, I'll take it." Well, beyond her, I see a mom in the galley with a young baby, and I thought, well, there's the rightful owner of the blanket. So I sat down in my seat and noticed that no one was yet in the dreaded middle seat, but there was already a gentleman at the window. Corporate professional, looked to be about my age, and you know, sometimes I'm chatty when I get on planes and sometimes I'm not. It just sort of depends on my mood. But I thought, you know what? I'm gonna strike up a conversation with this guy. Well, the way I did that was that I noticed on the empty seat in between us was a magazine. And it was a magazine about hang gliding. So I said to him, "Oh, you're into gliding." He says, "Well, I'm into hang gliding." So I proceed to go down this tangent and explain to him how my husband and his brother Steve, and my husband Steve and his brother had just taken this glider plane trip over Chilhowie Mountain, which is down near Chattanooga. Well, he kindly explains to me how hang gliding and glider planes really have nothing in common. In fact, with hang gliding, there's no plane. But he said to me, he said, because that's my hobby, he said, I always pick a window seat because I like to look out. And I said, "Oh, I always pick an aisle seat because I like to get out." So we're both pretty happy at this point. A little after 3:20, they close the front boarding door and we start backing away from the gate. Well, as we back away from the gate, I realize that no one has ever come to sit in our empty middle seat, even though they've been telling us this is completely full flight. So we back away and I looked at my seatmate and I said, "Well, this must be our lucky day because we're going to have all this elbow room to Charlotte, right?" Well, little did I know I drew those words would be in less than about 10 minutes. Sometimes I am asked if it was a completely full flight, why did we have an empty seat in between us? And that is because the baby counted as a passenger, even though he was sitting in his mother's lap. For LaGuardia standards, it really didn't take us very long to get to the runway, get our clearance for takeoff. We go barreling down the runway, and we're in the initial climb out of LaGuardia. And for the first 90 seconds, it was like every other plane trip I've ever been on. But somewhere between 90 seconds and 2 minutes, at an altitude of just about 3,000 feet, we hear this boom. And the plane dropped, not a lot, just a little bit. But I looked at my seatmate and I said, "What was that?" And he said, "It was birds." I said, "Oh." But then I looked to my left and I see smoke. And I smell this awful, awful odor that we now know was burning goose flesh. I hope you're done with your Chick-fil-A. But that drew up this memory in my mind. Because about 10 years before this, I had been on a flight that was a very turbulent flight. You may have been on those type yourself, where you're just sort of bouncing around, make you a little nervous, a little sick to your stomach. And I remembered when I was on that particular flight that there was a pilot who was a passenger like I was. He leaned over to me and he said, "Ma'am, do not worry about turbulence." He said, "That is just a customer service problem." He said, "All we worry about in the cockpit are birds and fire." So I thought, great, we've got both birds and fire. This is not good. About that time, the flight attendant comes up from the rear galley and she's trying to get something from behind my seat. I presumed it was the fire extinguisher. So I got out of my seat to grant her access, and she and I had a little bit of a heated exchange. Because I said, "Do you want me to call for the flight attendant?" She says, "I am the flight attendant." I'm like, "I know, but do you want help from the front?" And she said, "No, ma'am, I want you to sit back down." But she told me she wanted me to sit in the middle seat that had previously been empty in case she needed that aisle seat. So I sat down in the middle seat, buckled up as tightly as I could, and I looked at my seatmate and I said, "I have 3 children to raise." Kind of like nobody else on board had anything else to live for. But I've got 3 kids to raise. And he looked at me very calmly and he said, "I have a daughter and I'm going to see her tonight." Well, I tell you, I wanted to believe him with every fiber of my being, but I didn't. I'm an engineer. I'm a frequent flyer. And I realize at this point, there's no thrust, there's no engine noise, and we aren't climbing. And typically, jetliners don't crash and have people walk away. So I found myself sitting in a moment that I truly believed was my very last. So I'll ask you, if you found yourself sitting in a moment that you truly believed was your very last, who would you want to call? More importantly, what would you say? Well, the answer for me is pretty easy. I thought of Steve, I thought of our children, I thought, shame on Steve and me, because we both travel a lot, and we never keep up with the details, like what airline, what flight number, what connection city. So I thought, he doesn't even know I'm on board this plane. It could take him hours, days, a week to get confirmation. So I looked down at my feet, and there's my purse and my BlackBerry telephone sticking out. So I pulled out my BlackBerry, I turned it on, and I sent Steve a text message. And it was a 1-sentence text message that said, "My flight is crashing, period." Now, as a graduate of the University of Tennessee, and because y'all are all educators, I'm going to brag, and I'm going to tell you it had perfect punctuation and spelling. Steve later got on to me. He said, "Honey, could you not said I love you or kiss the kids or it was real?" But I told him, I said, as I was typing it, my seatmate said, "Put that up. You're out of time." Really? Really, God, at 37? I'm out of time? My great-grandmother, she had her hip replaced at age 104. On this particular day, 3 of my 4 grandparents are still alive. So it'd be a bit of an understatement to say I come from some pretty good genes. And I always pictured 97 at the nursing home for me, not 37 in a plane crash. But fortunately, I accepted the Lord in my heart a long time ago, so I was very clear on where I was going. But I do remember thinking, well, God, if this is your will, I accept it, but I'm not crazy about it. I'll take a little bit of a time out here and tell you about the atmosphere on board the airplane. It was really about as quiet as it is in this room. From where I was sitting, I could hear no yelling, no screaming, no panic, no engine noise. The only sound I remember hearing was just this loud whoosh of air going by. Have you ever been in one of those automated car washes and your car gets to the end and those great big dryers come up over your car? Well, that's precisely what it sounded like. And the passengers on board our flight, like most flights today, we represented a cross-section of this country. We were young and we were old. We were male and we were female. We were corporate CEOs and we were housewives. We were Buddhists, we were Muslims, we were Christians, and we were atheists. We came from all walks of life. And after the experience, most of us were interviewed. And we were asked, so what was going through your mind in the 3.5 minutes, which is the time from when the birds knocked out both our engines to the time we landed on the Hudson River? What was going through your mind? Well, interestingly enough, we fell into two pretty distinct groups. There was the first group that reported that their life sort of flashed before their eyes. They did like that rewind on their life. And then there was the other group, which happens to be the group that I fell into, that were thinking about all the things we were going to miss. I'm not going to be the mother of the bride. I won't see my youngest son hit his first home run. Who's going to plan their birthday parties? So I was very sad about all the things I was going to miss. And then over the PA system came the most calm, steady, in-control voice that I've ever heard. And that voice said two really short sentences. He said, "This is the captain. Brace for impact." Well, the brace position for me was I was bent over, seated with my arms folded, my knees folded, my arms down, kind of like into a sandwich, if you will. And from the back of the plane, I could hear the flight attendant chanting, "Brace, brace, heads down. Brace, brace, heads down. Feet flat on the floor. Brace, brace, heads down." It was just this melodic chant over and over and over again. And then in my ear, I hear my seatmate, who I kid you not is still looking out the window. He says to me, "Be ready. We're going in the water." I told you, I'm an engineer, so I like data. I like information. But I was not 100% sure what to do with that tidbit of information. How do I get ready to go in the water in this airplane? So I started thinking, okay, airplane, water, landing. Most likely what's going to happen is this plane is going to cartwheel. It's going to bust into a lot of different pieces. So Valley, if you're conscious, just swim to the light. Swim to the light is what I told myself. And I think this is an example of one of those times where mentally what we get ourselves prepared for has a whole lot to do with how well we accept the reality of a situation when it actually occurs. Because mentally, I got prepared for the very worst. But fortunately, the worst didn't happen that day because Captain Sullenberger and First Officer Skiles, they made a textbook landing on the Hudson River. And part of that landing required that they bring the tail of the airplane down first and hit the water at about 160 miles an hour. Well, I had the good fortune of sitting in the tail of the airplane that hit the river at 160 miles an hour. And I won't lie to you, it was rough and it was violent and it shook a lot. But when we seemingly stopped and I looked up and I was in one piece and that plane was in one piece, my first thought was, well, that wasn't that bad. I've had worse landings on runways. Now, the first words I said, I'd do not remember saying until I met my seatmate about 9 months later. And he told me what I said, and it is embarrassing. But I'm going to tell you anyway. He said, I popped my head up, I looked at him, and I said, open that window. He's like, okay, where's the button? Well, you all are really smart. You know that airplane windows don't open. Well, when you're sitting on the last row of a plane, if you've even remotely listened to the pre-flight instructions, or taken a look at the safety card, which I would encourage each and every one of you to do each and every time you board an airplane, there's one thing you know for sure. Your closest exit is behind you. So I bolt to the galley. I'm the first passenger in the rear galley. When I get there, the flight attendant's to my right. She doesn't realize we're in the water, and she's trying to crack open the left rear door. Well, I went over and began assisting her in trying to open that door. Well, there's no way we're going to get that door open. The water pressure on the outside is a lot stronger than she and I are. And she looks around, she says, oh no, we're in the water. She said, you have 2 minutes, go to the wings. And she was gone. By this time, more passengers have come to the rear galley, and they're trying to get the right rear door open, and it won't open either. And this is the point where I experienced my scariest moment, even scarier than before we landed in the river, because in a matter of seconds, the water came from my ankles to above my chest. And it was 35-degree water on a 22-degree day. So it was Titanic cold. It felt like needles in my body. And I remember thinking, oh Lord, please do not let me drown. I do not want to drown. And as crazy and as hokey as this may sound, I had this peace. I had this calm come over me. And I instinctively knew that panicking was not going to save my life. I knew I had to get off that airplane. Now look in front of me, and that nice, quiet, peaceful airplane atmosphere I was telling you about a few minutes ago, well, that's a thing of the past. It is mass chaos. People are crying, people are screaming, people are crawling over the seats. Some people are trying to get their luggage out of the overhead. I wish that was a joke, it's not. But a lot of the people are trying to come to the back, thinking the closest exit is the back. Well, I'm 100% sure we're not getting out the back. I mean, the back is sinking. So I did the only thing that I could do in the strongest, loudest southern voice I could muster. I put up both my hands and I began chanting, go to the wings, go to the wings, go to the wings. You know, after the experience, I had a reporter interview me. And he said, Mrs. Collins, what you did directing people to the wings, he said, it was just so heroic. I told him, I said, no, sir. I said, there was no heroism involved at all. I simply wanted out, and they were all in my way. So I said, my mama taught me not to push. But people started to hear me. It started to turn. We started to move towards the wings. As we moved towards the wings, it was like walking uphill. And as you walked uphill, the water started to subside. There was a seat cushion floating by. So I grabbed it. I put it on my right arm. Continued to chant, go to the wings, until I got to probably around row 15 or 16. And that's when I could see the light of day. Because the over the wing exits were at rows 10 and 11. And once I could see the light of day, my chant turned into stay calm, we're going to make it, God's good, just keep moving, we're going to make it. And I made it. I took a right-hand turn, I came out on the right wing. You don't see me in this particular picture because at this point I'm still in the airplane because I was one of the last passengers out. But I stepped out onto the icy wing, and I remember having two really clear, distinct thoughts. And the first thought came when I looked to my left, and about 400 yards in the distance, I could see the first ferry boat approaching. It was a New York Waterways Thomas Jefferson. And as they say, she was coming full steam ahead. And I saw that boat approaching, and I thought, I'm not dying today. Today's not going to be my day. In the past 7-8 minutes, I really thought twice that I was going to die. But these people are going to save us. And I'll tell you, Sully, he did a fantastic job of getting our airplane safely in the river. But had it not been for the immediate, effective, and collective efforts of the first responders of New York and New Jersey, I do not believe we would have had 155 survivors. Our airplane sunk in 24 minutes. And in less than 17 minutes, they had all 155 of us safely rescued. So as Sullenberger says of them, thank you, just seems so inadequate. But I always like to say thanks to them and to all first responders everywhere that put their lives on the line to save ours each and every day. And then my second thought was, why didn't this happen in June? Because I've never been so cold in my entire life. I began assessing the situation around me. And what I observed is that out of the wing there is a slide that's deployed, and passengers are spilling onto this slide. It's turned into a makeshift raft. And I look to my left and I see the mom, and she's got the baby. And she has another child with her, and she's very distraught because her husband's farther out on the wing, and he's in complete shock. So as a mother, I'm empathizing with her situation. When in my ear, I hear people in the raft yelling, "Throw the baby! Throw the baby!" And I'm like, what? And this man looks at me and he says, "Get those kids." So I thought, okay, I will. I'll get those kids. So I stepped off of the wing onto the raft. I was never really in the belly of the raft. I was sort of on the back left edge. And I turned to the mom. And I'll never know what gave her the confidence in me. But I said, "Hand me your baby." So she stretched out her arms, I stretched out my arms, and she handed me 9-month-old Daniel. And I turned and I gave him to someone more secure in the raft than I was there on the edge. Then I turned back to her and I said, "Give me your little girl." So she gave me her daughter, and we sat down like pretzel style on the edge of the raft. And at that point, my biggest concern was, if she and I fall back in this water, can I physically save us both? I still got my seat cushion. At this point, they're starting to throw down life jackets. So I grab a life jacket, I have this child in my lap. I'm like, "Okay, Valley, you have got to calm down. I mean, you're the adult here. This child has to be scared to death." I start rubbing her head. I asked her name. I asked her mother. I said, "What's her name?" She said, "Sophia." Well, I'll tell you, Sophia taught me something about the bravery of children. Because she never cried, she never yelled, she never screamed, she never said a word. You know, the only thing she did was she chewed on my arm through my sweater. That's when I knew it was not a bad dream, because I could feel these teeth, treating my arm like a drumstick. And I looked down, and you know what Sophia was holding? She was holding the baby blue baby blanket that was draped across the back of my seat when I boarded flight 1549. I don't know if you choose to believe in signs or not, but I choose to think maybe I was tagged to help that family that day. But in actuality, she was the bigger blessing for me because she forced me to stay calm. We sat on our raft for about 10 to 12 minutes, which is the time it took for our ferry boat, the Yogi Berra, to get close enough to grant us access, but not so close that they capsized the raft and pushed us back up against the plane. Ferry boats are not built to be rescue boats. They were doing the very best job they could do with the tools they had. And climbing out was not easy. The deck of the ferry boat was probably 10 to 12 feet or so above our heads, and we didn't really have a ladder. Have you ever seen a rope climbing wall that sort of looks like a grid? It was like that, but it was made out of rubber. And a lot of passengers physically struggled with just being able to climb out. Sophia and I got our turn. We climbed about halfway up. I pushed her up over my head, and somebody on the boat took her. I climbed on out. It was a double-decker enclosed ferry boat. So I step in on the first floor, and I see this snack bar type area. And I thought, maybe there's a towel there, because I am so cold. I'm just shaking uncontrollably. So I rummage around, look for a towel, and there's no towel. And then it hits me. Like, oh, I sent Steve a text message telling him my flight was crashing. And I'm alive. Well, I had left every possession on board the airplane. So I had nothing except my wet clothes. But I see a gentleman with a phone. And I said, "Sir, may I please borrow your phone?" He said, Sure. So I called Steve. I said, "Honey, it's me. I'm okay." And you know what he said? He said, "Call your mother." So I called my mother. And if there's a language called hysteria, she was fluent on that afternoon. I had no idea what she said to me. But she said when she heard me say, "I'm wet and I'm cold," she said, "I knew you knew enough, you'd be okay." I was taken to the Weehawken, New Jersey ferry terminal. We were processed there for about 2 hours. And part of that processing required that those of us that were in wet clothes get out of the wet clothes. So I was given a men's New York Waterways uniform, which consisted of size 48 Dickie pants, a triple XL sweater, and a fantastic soft pocket. But somebody, bless them, had the presence of mind to go down to the local store and buy a package of tube socks. And they came back, and they were passing out the dry tube socks. And I promise you, in that moment, if they had said $1 million or dry socks, I'd pick the socks. It really is the little things in life that matter the most when you genuinely need them. I was taken to the University of Hoboken Medical Center. I was later released that night. My good fortune continued because Steve's cousin lives 5 blocks from that hospital. So I got to spend the night with family instead of a hotel room alone. But since that day, I have been asked hundreds of times, so Valley, how has your life changed? Well, my life hasn't really changed that much. I still live here in beautiful East Tennessee. I'm still married to a great guy. I have 3 fantastic children. But my sense of life purpose and life responsibility has definitely changed. And while I've taken a lot of learnings away from this experience, there's 5 key ones that I'm going to share with you this morning. And let me warn you, none of these are rocket science. I am not going to blow you away with my wisdom. But the first learning is the importance of kindness. Simple kindness. In the days after the crash, I remember thinking, had it ended tragically, and my face would have been one of 154 others on the front page of the USA Today, would the Avis bus driver that took me from the rental car lot to the terminal, would he have thought of me as a kind person? Did I smile at the gate agent when she scanned my ticket and told me to have a nice flight? Was I as friendly as I could possibly be to my seatmate? And what struck me about that is as we walk through our day-to-day lives, we really have no idea who the other person is that we may have our very last interaction. It might be my spouse that I kissed goodnight, but it may very well be the drive-thru worker at Chick-fil-A that hands me my unsweet tea. So make a conscious effort to simply be kind to other people. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "You can never do a kindness too soon, for you never know how soon it may be too late." And the second learning is the learning of empathy. I've already told you, I'm more of a thinker versus a feeler type person. If you had said to me, Valley, you're going to be on a plane, it's going to crash, everyone's going to survive, and you're going to walk off without a scratch on you, how will you react? Well, I would have told you, I guess I'll just be happy to be alive and I'll move right on. Well, I am happy to be alive. The moving on piece was not so simple for me. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's a very real mental illness, disease, injury, whatever label you want to put on it. But in going through the process of dealing and healing from PTSD, it gave me a heightened sense of empathy for others and the emotional battles that others deal with. Whether it's depression, anxiety, manic, bipolar, you name it. What I learned is that someone might look just fine on the outside, like I did, but you don't necessarily know what they may be wrestling with on the inside. So always be willing to give folks just a little bit of extra empathy, especially for those things that maybe you personally don't understand. The third learning is physical fitness and the importance of physical fitness. I've always enjoyed staying physically active. I like to play tennis, strength train, swim with my kids, go skiing. But after being a part of an experience like this one, it taught me just how important it is, to the best of our ability, to stay as physically fit as you can. Because you just don't know when you may find yourself in a situation where physically you've got to be able to save your own life, the life of a friend or family member, or maybe just be willing to help out a complete stranger. And the fourth learning is the learning of perspective. And this is a big one for me. This is a two-part one, if you will. And the first part about perspective is I have a whole new scale by which to calibrate how upset to get over something. You know, if my lab puppy chews up my favorite pair of running shoes, I can go get some more running shoes. My 10th grade son and I get in a heated argument because he thinks playing his video game is more important than doing his Algebra 2 homework. I'm glad I'm the mom that's still here that gets to make him do the Algebra 2 homework. You want to be the first person on I-75 North when we leave here? That's fine. Cut me off on the on-ramp. I will get to where I'm going 18 seconds after you do. That cliche, don't sweat the small stuff, it's really quite true. There are very few things that we encounter in our day-to-day life that are worth raising our blood pressure up over. And the second part about perspective is, you know, there's nothing really special about me. I'm not a famous person. I'm not a politician. I can't sing. I'm a horrible writer. I'm really not even a very good cook. You could ask my family. They'd be happy to tell you. But in the days after the crash, I remember just being overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support that I received. Whether it came in the form of a phone call, a note on my Facebook wall, an email, a casserole dish, a visit to our house, you name it. It was overwhelming. As morbid as this will sound, it was a bit like getting to go to my own funeral. And I remember thinking, wow, I didn't really realize how many relationships I had made in my short 37 years at that point, and how much people really cared. So it got me to thinking, if we all pretended that our life was a pebble that dropped into a still pond, there'd be a ripple effect, right? And if we pretended that the ripples represented all the relationships that we've made over the course of our lives, the ripples will be pretty far-reaching for each and every one of us in this room. When you think about all the ripples in your life, I would encourage you to do a few things. I would encourage you to make sure those relationships are as healthy as they can possibly be. So for example, if there's maybe some forgiveness you need to extend or gratitude you need to express to one of the ripples in your life, I would encourage you to go ahead and get that done. I would also encourage you to never stop making the ripples. I think we all grossly underestimate the impact that our one life can have over so many others. Mother Teresa once said, I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast the stones into the waters and create many ripples. And the last learning is related to the concept of time. I have spent a lot of time just thinking about time over the past 11 and a half years. It's a really interesting concept when you stop and think about it. Because no matter where you live on this planet, whether you speak English or Spanish or German or Japanese, we all understand this concept of a 24-hour day, a 7-day week, a 52-week year. But there's not a single one of us that knows exactly how much time we have left. I will go ahead and answer a question for you. I did not fly home from the crash. I have flown 380 times since that day, but I did not fly home. U.S. Airways flew Steve to New York. They rented us this big black Lincoln Town Car, and he drove me the 13 hours back to East Tennessee. He said it's a bit like driving Miss Daisy. We got home very late on Saturday night. My in-laws were there. They had been keeping the children while Steve came and got me. And as you can imagine, there's a cheerful, joyful reunion in the entry hall. But I've been in the house about 2 minutes. And my mother-in-law, whom I actually love, she comes over and she begins pulling on me. And I'm thinking, could you give me just a minute? I mean, I just got home. I was in this plane crash. Have you heard? It's all over the news. But I know my mother-in-law. And when she gets something in her mind, it is easier to just comply. Just do what she wants you to do. Well, what she wants me to do is she wants me to go to this room in our house that we call the kids' den. Well, at Christmas time, just a few weeks before this, I'd remodeled the kids' den, made it more of like a family media room. And in part of this process, I had bought this wall hanging. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to what it said when I bought it. I just liked the shape, I liked the colors. I got it at Target. It wasn't even expensive. But she pulls me in the room, she says, "What is that?" I said, "Oh, it's the wall hanging I got at Target." She says, "Read that." So I looked at it, and indeed it does have this very subtle message that says, how great would life be if we lived a little bit of it every day? And you know what it has on it? It has an airplane. It's the only thing in my house with an airplane on it. So when I think about time, I think about taking time to live a little bit every day. Whatever living means to you. If it's going on a run, taking a nap, reading a book, having lunch with a friend, staying after school to help a child with an assignment, take that time and acknowledge, this was my living moment for today. I will guarantee you, in the 3.5 minutes, which is the time when the birds knocked out both our engines, till the time we landed on the Hudson River, there was not a single one of us on board that airplane that were worried about how much money was in our checking account, how many unanswered emails were in our inbox, whether our yards were mowed or our dishwashers were unloaded. We were worried about the time we were going to miss with the people that we love. And I'll close with one final thought. Have you ever read a book, seen a billboard, heard a song, and it felt like the words just spoke to you, like they leapt up off the page? Well, that happened to me. It's the summer after the crash. I'm reading a novel, simple book of fiction titled The Art of Racing in the Rain. Anybody read it? Okay, it's written by Garth Stein, and it is written from the voice of the family dog. And the family dog's name is Enzo. And throughout the book, Enzo is taking an inventory of all the humans around him. He's paying attention to what the humans do well and what they don't do so well. Because he's getting himself prepared for when he's going to be a human one day. When he's a human, he wants to be the best possible human that he can be. Well, the wife in the story, her name is Eve, and unfortunately she passes away at a very young age. And after Eve passes away, this is what Enzo thinks. In this case, the family dog spoke to him. Enzo says, "To live every day as if it has been stolen from death. That is how I would like to live. To feel the joy of life as Eve felt the joy of life. To separate oneself from the burden, the angst, the anguish that we all encounter every day. To say, I am alive. I am wonderful. I am. That is something to aspire to. When I'm a person, that is how I would live my life. So as people, I would encourage us all to live our lives being kind and empathetic towards others. Take some time to stay physically fit. Especially in these days, apply a big, healthy dose of perspective to all situations. And maximize, utilize, enjoy, and give the time you have left. And I thank you for sharing a bit of that time with me today. And to all of you out in the cyber world.
Questions pop up for Ms. Collins, that burning questions you'd like to know, especially looking at that picture on the screen. Any questions you want to ask?
I promise you won't scare me. It takes a lot. Of course, y'all, you can't be scared either. You stand in front of kids all the time. Yes, ma'am.
Do you keep in touch with the 2 children?
The question is, so everybody here is, do I keep in touch with the 2 children? Yes, we have stayed connected over the years. The little girl is the same age as my youngest son, so it's very easy mentally for me to keep up. You know, she'll be going into her sophomore year of high school right now because my son is. They live in New York. They were going to Charlotte. I think it was her mom was having surgery, so they were going down there for that. But they're doing fine. There's a third one. They ended up having another child a few years after the crash. So I think they're in the baby. He would be 11, almost 12 now. So they're doing fine as far as I know. Any other questions?
Well, you teased me earlier
Okay.
when you said about your luggage. How did that play out? Because we've all had lost luggage stories. This is a little more.
Yeah, this is next level, right?
Yeah, this is next level.
So the question is about our luggage. Did we get our luggage back? It's a little bit of a long answer, but it's kind of fun. I did get my luggage back. I was on a one-night trip, so I had a suitcase, a briefcase, a purse, and a coat. That's all I had. It came back in 7 boxes. It was like it multiplied in the water. Everything was cleaned, inventory. My expired coupons were individually wrapped when it all came back. But it was funny, when they sent us a letter, we didn't get everything back until like May. It happened in January, so it took them about 5 months, but early February, I get a letter saying, this is the company that's cleaning the luggage, it'll take a few months, but they had my wrong address on the letter. We had moved over the course. So I thought, well, I better call them, give them the correct address, so when they do ship all my luggage, it'll come to the right place. So I'm on the phone with the man, and he starts asking me questions. He said, do you have any unassociated items, meaning something that didn't have my name on it? Like, well, my coat didn't have my name on it, but everything else would have had my name on it. And we're chatting, and I said, what a project. I cannot imagine you all trying to piecemeal all these items together for 155 people and get it to the right place. And he said, this is perspective. He said, ma'am, it's the best project we've ever had. He said, because normally I'm cleaning this stuff and sending it to victims' families. He said, the fact that you're going to get your suitcase back, he goes, makes it the best project we've ever had. So I still have the briefcase. I still wear some of the shoes. I still have the coat. So we got it all back. My cell phone, they sent my cell phone back and all the buttons had popped off of it. This is back in the day when there were buttons. And my husband's like, I think you should take that down to Verizon and tell them you want a new one. that thing's malfunctioning. I'm like, I don't know. So. Anyway, any other questions?
How hard was it How hard was it to get back on the plane?
Hard, but I flew 5 days later. And I knew that day, I knew I wasn't flying home, but I knew I'd fly again. I was not going to handcuff my family to the ground because I knew if mama doesn't fly, nobody's flying, right? So I flew 5 days later because the Ellen DeGeneres show called. And she said, if you'll come to New York, I'll fly you, your husband, and your children. And so I thought it would be fun, number one. But I thought, here's a time to show my kids. You can be scared of something, but you do it anyway. Don't let the fear win. But if I'm being honest, that first flight wasn't as hard as the flights 3 months, 6 months, even a year later, once my brain kind of, the adrenaline had settled down, the reality of it all set in. I mean, in hindsight, at day 5, I really didn't know which end was up. But so I struggled with that for a long time. And my little grandmother, who never liked to fly, by the way, I was talking to her about it one day, and she said, well, Valley, if you run away from one thing, you will run into something else. So I thought, you're right, so I keep flying. And you had a question.
After I found out, I remember the story on the news, after I found out everybody was okay, and didn't follow after that. But were they able to raise the plane, or did they have to go into the water and retrieve everything? How did that work?
Yeah, so the question in Cyber World is, after it happened, how did they get the plane out? Did they retrieve it? The answer is yes. So they drug it all the way to Battery Park at the tip of Manhattan. They pulled it up. It sat in New Jersey for insurance stuff for quite a while. About 2 years after that, they took the wings off and they brought it down the interstate system all the way to Charlotte. So it made it to its final destination. It was really cool. It was amazing, the people that lined roadways and stuff to cheer this plane coming down. And they put it all back together, and it was at the Carolinas Aviation Museum. They're doing some renovations, so it's not there right now. They'll reopen it. But at the 3-year anniversary, we got to go to the museum and get back on board and take our seats. And so that was kind of a surreal moment. It was funny when we walked in at the time of the 3-year they had the left wing back on, but they hadn't put the right wing back on. We walk into the hangar, and my youngest is 7 at this point, and he's pulling on my dress. He's like, Mom, I'm like, what? He's like, that plane's only got one wing. His little brain was like, I'm 7 and I wouldn't have gotten on that thing. I was like, okay, buddy, it had 2 wings when Mommy got on it. So, but they did get it back, and they left it in the condition it was when it came out of the water. So, and you know, this sounds really hokey, but of course I'm thankful for Sully and I'm thankful for Skiles. But I sat in front of that plane. One of the engineers said it should have cracked at row 22. There's a big crease in it. I was at row 26. And so I look at that plane and I'm just thankful for every engineer, every mechanic, because the plane did what it was not built to do. It stayed together. And I'm thankful that the Hudson was there and it was wide enough and it wasn't icy. There's a lot of, for something that went terribly wrong, we had so many things go right. And I think we need to keep that in mind today. There's a lot going on that's terribly wrong. But we gotta look for what's going right. And I think when we all get through this, not to be sappy, we will look back and there will be some positives that will come out of this situation we're in. And let me just say, thanks to all of you, you principals, you administrators, your teachers, y'all are the best of the best. I know it's gonna be a very scary, uncertain school year, so I'm praying for you. Stay flexible, stay positive. You make big impact on a lot of lives. So kids are looking to us right now, you know, so here's the time to shine. This is everybody's chance to be Sully. We just do what's not expected. Do what they don't think can be done. It can be done. So blessings to you all. Any other questions? I'm not trying to skirt the question. Okay, thank you. Y'all have a great school year, as weird as it's gonna be.
What a perfect message and a perfect way to think about starting this year with so many uncertainties, yet so much to be thankful for. And I love the message of assuming goodwill, which we talk about a lot in this school system. And we're going to have to grant a lot of grace to each other over the course of this year and thinking through that. I just want to say personally for me, all of the work that everybody has engaged in over the summer to get us ready to start this school year and be prepared for whatever may come our way, we're ready for that. There's so much work that's gone on with our instructional coaches and our teachers and our lead teachers and just everybody pitching in to figure this out. And it's just really little problems that we need to solve along the way. And I love the idea of just not getting too worked up about any one little thing, because we can solve those problems together. We've done it before. We'll continue to do that. So thank you for the inspirational message. Thank you to everybody in Lenoir City Schools. I'm so proud to be a Lenoir City Panther, and I'm just looking forward to everything the school year is going to bring. Everything the school year is going to bring. So thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of the day and enjoy a good weekend. We'll hit the ground running on Monday.
Oh,
And good luck at graduation.
And I forgot my Lenoir City connection.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so my niece is Emily Collins. She graduated in 2017, and my nephew is Wyatt Collins. He will graduate in 21. Don't hold them against me. They were fabulous. Great, too. So that's my Lenoir City connection.
That's
We have
awesome.
2 Panthers in our family.
That's great. Thank you. All right, guys. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.